everybody, how's it going? I am doing another one of the challenges from the Discord server I'm a part of. It's the Dark Arts Discord server. They post prompts and things. I like to use these prompts to help push me along when I'm a little bit stuck. It's also just good practice to do things outside your normal thing. I'm gonna do the challenge to the spirit of the challenge, but I'll probably work it into my magic system here in this video as well. I've had a rough couple of weeks. It's been real rough, guys. I've been struggling to get through a couple of pieces I'm working on. We had a couple of emergencies, children, pets, school, family, you know the drill. It's been rough, and I'm very tired. But anyway, tiredness aside, this was actually really fun. I'm trying to work on more organic, like nature type stuff. A lot of my stuff has nature in it. I get that. But I'd like to be more confident about it. Also with the little travel trailer. And I want to start working on more buildings and scenes. All of this will play into eventually putting together my own stories. I'm just kind of practicing working out how I want my stories to look, how I'm going to go about them. I haven't really decided on a full-on graphic novel or an illustrated book situation. I lean pretty heavily towards the graphic novel situation, but there are people in my life and online who are like, you should write a book, a full story. And I know that there's some contention between graphic novels and books and how those go together or don't. I'm an artist first. I've struggled to write my entire life. Everything I've ever written down is either still in a notebook in my pile of notebooks or has been ripped up and burned because I feel so exposed by it. Which is, it seems like a silly thing because I'm posting artwork online, but really artwork can be interpreted and it can be subjective, and I know that writing and stories are subjective as well, but there's a certain rawness to writing that I struggle with. I've been writing my whole life, but I keep it very private because I tend to get emotional otherwise. I was in a creative writing class in college and we had to read our papers out loud. I cried. Not just because I was terrified of reading out loud, but also funny because internet. But reading publicly is completely different than talking to myself in an empty room and then posting it online, as opposed to being stared at by 20 other people. When you're reading about something that was supposed to be personal, it was personal. I can talk about it, but reading about it after something, and it was just hard. It's hard. Writing is hard. Also, the graphic novel thing is kind of in line with visual storytelling, but I don't want to do it like a traditional graphic novel. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, these prompts are excellent. They push me out of my comfort zone. This one was called Twilight Tents. So it specifically was supposed to be a campground, scenery focused. Some of the current submissions are primarily tents. And the prompt is called Twilight Tents. But I am taking a little bit of liberty with that, and I decided to go camper because I'm trying to transition to hard lines and buildings and vehicles because that needs to be part of what I'm moving on to tell the rest of my story. So it kind of needs to be in line. Who am I kidding? I just wanted to draw a camper. I really just wanted to draw a camper. So that's what I did. My campground here, I decided to call Haunted Hollow Park and Sleep. So with the prompts, you have to come up with a name. In this case, it's the name of the campground and the medium used. I'm painting with gouache because even though I was mostly using acrylic until about a year ago, I started using gouache and fell in love. It is traditional gouache. It is water soluble. It can be a pain in the butt to work with, but also it's my favorite thing ever. It's really forgiving and it dries flat, and that's what I need in my life. Matte finish and dries flat. It's comforting. I like it. Yeah, so this is called Haunted Hollow Park and Sleep, playing into the, campground theme. Also, in my magic system and my stories, the whole idea is that the main body of the story happens during and after magic has collided back into the non-magic mortal realm. They were always supposed to be one and the same. They became separated at the hands of Fae type creatures because they thought that the separation would allow them to hoard the magic and fix their problem with not being able to have children at a regular rate. That was separated. It was not correct, and magic and the world, the universe, the existence itself has righted itself and is throwing magic back into the world. Now, it started with just cracks. There were bleeding points from the beginning because that separation was so difficult. There were magical creatures and places that were left behind but were kind of being bled dry. And the magic that they had retained was being recycled and reused in very minimal ways, right? In the larger story, which we'll get to another time, I imagine existence was separated. So it wasn't just magic that floods back into this world. It's like an entire reality with its own civilizations and buildings and people, and our reality with our own civilizations and buildings and people. And they converge, creating a completely new landscape, meaning some things are completely destroyed. Lives are lost, people are missing. But also, I imagine there being some really interesting combinations between like architecture, more modern, and then super fanciful, kind of crashing into each other and merging into one in places where there's more magic and was able to kind of knit together into one thing instead of many separate things and rubble. I decided to take this particular challenge, the campsite challenge here, and I know that in like larger, more populated areas, there's going to be a big boom, right? But what about these smaller, less populated areas? Maybe there are areas in both dimensions that are less populated, there aren't people around. It's like a campsite here. Somebody's just out there. Maybe there's nobody else in the campsite that night. It's a really rural area. And instead of it being a bang, there are just suddenly beings there, creatures, magical creatures, critters. Maybe it's the ghosts that have been there this whole time. It is called Haunted Hollow. Maybe it's just the ghosts, the spirits of the people who were there, but the flood of magic and things being unsettled, because I imagine it'll take a lot of time for magic to settle back in to how it's meant to be, that maybe those beings were given a little bit more oomph than what they normally did. So like maybe people saw things or heard things, but now suddenly they're these kind of corporeal beings that can interact with the world in the way they weren't able to before. Which would be interesting, especially because, like, if you're of the mindset that ghosts or people who've passed on are, like, conscious entities, does that mean that those conscious entities now come back to themselves in a more physical form than they were able to before? But also, there are a lot of instances where it's like a repeat, like where incidents happened and maybe the things that left behind are just playbacks of reality in that time and place, and or just bits and pieces, scraps of who these people or things used to be, right? So I kind of imagine that being a thing where, like, if it's a person and it was just a scrap of who that person was left behind, right? Then suddenly you're flooded with magic, you have a consciousness, or maybe you didn't, you become something else completely. Like, you're no longer that person, but what are you now? So I kind of imagine these creatures coming to, and both like the universe and also like people as a whole, nobody really knows. Maybe these were things that existed before. Maybe they were people that existed before. Maybe there were beings that existed before the worlds were separated. Or maybe there's something completely new because they existed without magic being in the world in the way that it was supposed to. And then the sudden combination of the two creates something completely new. I'm not really sure. But it's something I want to explore. It's something I plan on looking at. It's like there are magical creatures that were left behind. Like we have vampires without magic like existing in the form that it should have in our magical universe. But vampires did not exist before the separation. They exist because of the separation. We will get into that. No spoilers here. We will get into that. But is this just a new creature altogether? And I think it would be very cool if it was. Like maybe they used to be people and then they died and they were scraps of people left behind, scraps, pieces of soul, right? The magic comes back in, they turn into some, I don't know. We'll figure it out. I'm not sure what they are. I want to explore that more. Here in the painting, I decided to add like some little fins here in the water and be like, oh man, maybe there's also larger mythical creatures like a dragon. I don't know. And then I decided it didn't go with the rest of the painting and I got rid of it. But yeah, I think I want to focus on like, I think I'm going to use this as grounds to create other types of beings. So like we have your traditional fae and magical creatures and dragons and the existence of magic in another dimension. And then the magical creatures that got left behind here and had to learn how to survive and or die off, and then there are generations of them that carry the genetics to be what they were, that had to change and evolve to survive in a world without the magic, right? So when magic comes back, they're changed. Their bloodlines, their children, great grandchildren, great grandchildren, they're all changed. The spirits left behind, they're changed either into like what they should have been and or into something completely different. See, that's why these prompts are good, is because they kind of get my mind moving and allow me to add details and growth into like the universe that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to come up with. Anyways, I hope that you guys like the direction this is going. Let me know your thoughts, feelings, opinions. I really appreciate comments. And I hope everyone has a much calmer summer than I have had thus far. I hope to see you here next time. Bye, everyone.